In this video, we will learn about the principal foundations of our universe. We will learn what is time, space, and whether there might also be a God in this universe. This video is for all those whose cup isn't already too full to take on new ideas, concepts, and for those who want to see the most fundamental principles of simply everything. In order to achieve this, however, we have to boldly go where no man has gone before. For this reason, this video is not simple, but perhaps it is simpler for an open-minded child than the supposedly smartest adult who is comfortably sitting on his own Mount Stupid and, in contrast to his own belief, doesn't know anything at all. In short, in this video, you will find out whether you are already infected by and whether you can be cured from the insanity of the human world around you. We start with the question of what could be the most general and fundamental ingredient for the creation of a universe. Yes, imagine yourself to just be the creator and ask yourself, what could I use to make me a universe? Because you are very open-minded and not keen to restrict yourself by whatever form of political, religious, or any other form of correctness, you answer this question with the word property. Yes, indeed. You just take a property and you will see that this actually was a very wise decision. What this property is does not matter at all. The only important thing is that the property ranges a bit from here to there, from a bit more of the very property to a bit less. Having one property, you might even, perhaps, like to add a few more, would you not? Okay, so let's go on. Let's have 2, 3, 4, and so on properties. And while still putting properties together, you suddenly realize that you could also name your properties dimension. But wait a minute, dimensions? Doesn't this have to do with space and time and all this? That's right. While one dimension is a line, 2 form a surface, and 3 give you real space, you also might add a 4th dimension and name it time. Wow, great. Now I have space-time, and what do I do with it? Well, as it is your universe, I have not the right to make any suggestion at this point. But if you'd ask me what the creator of our universe had done, the answer is both simple and strange. In our universe, the dimensions always try to form ensembles in such a way that the result is a kind of minimum. It is like everything is a bit lazy and wants to rest inside the deepest point of a valley. And this is all, you might ask. Yes, that's just it, we will answer. So now we have to warn you, because there are many big people out there who will consider your simple, but nevertheless most substantial explanation regarding the consistency of our universe insufficient or even, oh yes, silly. Well, for these people you need words which in principle say the same as what you've just heard, but which sound a bit more complicated. Big people, most especially the insane and stupid ones, simply always fall for this kind of stuff, even though they usually don't understand one word from this more complicated selection. Crazy, isn't it? The big people do not accept the simple explanations because they consider them too simple. But they don't understand the complicated stuff neither. That is always why we think they are all ill. Admittedly, there are also big people, very few though, who actually do understand a bit more, and those you get presented as experts in television and certain newspapers. And in case you meet one of these types, we suggest that you just do the following. The cleverest of the big people will ask you something about quantum and relativity, and they will inform you that everybody knows that, so far, these two things could not be combined. In case this particular problem comes up, you simply write down the equation you see here and then tell them clever types that there is one way to show that quantum and relativity do not need to be married, because they are already a quite harmonic couple, wedding ring or blessing of the Pope or not. And in order to motivate the big people to try and look for themselves, you might also tell them that there are also other options for two things to live together, so that it doesn't necessarily have to be classical marriage. But now it is enough with boring equations, and you'd like to move on to a few more pressing matters. Like the one, what could happen to an almighty God in a universe without uncertainties, which is to say, where a yes is always a clear and sharp yes, and a no is always a clear and a sharp no. I'm sure you cannot imagine such a stupid universe to have ever existed, because, taking your own parents, you know from experience that a "no, you cannot have this fancy new t-shirt" usually renders into you wearing exactly this very t-shirt the other day, right? But just imagine for a short moment this would not be so and you were a god. The moment you just think, "I am not," you would in fact be not. Meaning, you vanish the moment you think, "I am not." So it is for this reason that an almighty God probably would like it very much in a universe like ours, which is to say in a universe with some very fundamental uncertainties. In the case you don't know what uncertainties are, don't worry, I don't know either. I'm simply always only telling myself that in our universe there is always a non-vanishing likelihood that the picture in the middle in fact shows a snake which has just, probably by accident, swallowed an elephant. There is always a non-vanishing probability that this could happen, and that, after some heated discussion between the elephant and the snake from inside the snake's belly to the outside and backwards, the snake releases the elephant, and both animals can tell the tale. Great, isn't it? So let's move on to the next question. What is time? Do you think that something could be at rest while its vicinity is permanently moving, wiggling and jittering? No, of course not. All things have some kind of an inner degree of freedom which allows them to change. If now one thing is using this degree of freedom, automatically the whole environment is affected and also is forced to do some changing. This, admittedly, is a very simple explanation, and because there might be big people laughing at you when you actually try to give it, we also have a more accurate one. If something changes, it always has to do so with respect to something else. Otherwise, there would be no change at all, right? This automatically brings the two somethings together. Scientists, which means just big people with big brains, call this entanglement of the two somethings. And the funny thing is now that this entanglement automatically brings about time. This is extremely important because it means that time is not simply there, but that change actually makes it. Processes, which is to say happenings of whatever kind of change, do not exist or happen in time, but they are actually bringing about time. Okay, and now we want to know what is mass or energy of any kind of matter. And as with time, we find that the moment we combine or entangle two or more dimensions, we obtain matter. And what about space? Do we also have entanglement there? Well, thank goodness, this is not quite that simple. Because entangled dimensions very often do not combine to space where we could live in. The reason is that most entangled spaces have no measurable distance and no size. So there would be no room for us to actually be in there. However, this does not mean that the universe might not have realized such funny spaces with no size and no distance. Elementary particles like the electron, the neutrinos, or the quarks could be of such a shape. Or the whole universe could have existed in such a form before it actually exploded into existence during the process that we know today as the Big Bang. Well, and now, of course, we want to know what are those 6 infinity stones, right? Some of you might think that it has to do with these little gems here, but no. First of all, there is a copyright on these stones. And second, well, the infinity stones are not stones at all, but they are very fundamental solutions to very universal equations. It is very peculiar that there are exactly 6 such solutions, and we might ask ourselves whether the people at Marvel know more about the universe than they give away in their movies. Well, but who cares anyway? But the point is, we now know that the infinity stones are certain forms of wiggles the universe allows to the simplest, the one-dimensional space, which are, you remember, lines, or as some call them, strings. Our final question shall be whether God might be lazy and perhaps uses a computer to do all his creation work. This should then be a very powerful machine, and so we ask, how good could the best computer be one might be able to build in this universe? Simply using the fundamental knowledge we have already presented in this video, we derive such a universal computer, and we can also find out something about its potential powers. Our result is so unimaginable that we would conclude that, from your perspective, the power of such a machine could only be compared with the powers of a god. Okay, but with such a thing being principally possible in our universe, doesn't this automatically mean that there has to be a god? No, it does not mean that at all. It only means that there could be one.